Hello, welcome to the 10th edition of our Medicine and the Muse Stanford Medicine Stuck at Home concerts. I'm Dr. Bryant Lin from the Stanford Department of Medicine, and along with Jacqueline Genovese from Stanford Medicine and the Muse program, I've been co-hosting this weekly Stuck at Home concert series for the last 9 weeks, believe it or not. This evening's concert will be a bit different than we've had, and that is this is the annual Medicine and the Muse Symposium, which, as many of you know, is typically held in Berg Hall on campus and features medical students sharing their creative talents and a keynote speaker who is an artist whose work is at the intersection of medicine and the arts. The annual symposium was started by Dr. Audrey Schaefer, the faculty director of the Medicine and the Muse program, and is nearing its 20th consecutive year at Stanford School of Medicine. We didn't want to break that tradition, so we are bringing you this symposium virtually with music and prose from our medical students and a discussion with filmmaker Ken Brown, who will present his clip of his documentary, Why Doctors Write, and briefly discuss his creative process. The Q&A will be open for your comments and questions, so please use the Q&A, and we have disabled the chat as usual. Our MC for the evening will be the medical student, Ashley Stevenson. Ashley is a first-year medical student who grew up mostly in Sydney, Australia. She previously worked in science communication and is passionate about health justice and loves hiking, horses, and everything dinosaurs. Who doesn't like dinosaurs? So we are thrilled that you have joined us this evening, and now I will turn it over to Ashley to get us started. And again, as always, please be patient with any technical issues. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lin, and hello, everybody. I'm so excited that you all made it tonight. I know it's a little bit of a strange circumstance and a rough time, and many of us process everything that's going on right now through the humanities. I'm going to attempt to guide us through the night. And so first up, I am very pleased to introduce our student committee director, second-year student Rose Wong, and she will give some opening remarks.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to the MedMuse 2020 Symposium, which is quite a bit different than we've run before. My name is Rose Wong. As Ash mentioned, I'm a second-year med student. I've also had the honor to help with directing this year's symposium. And it's been an offbeat kind of experience. Instead of sharing the delicious finger food and having the catering from the Li Ka-shing Center, we're forced to rely on whatever's in the pantry. Instead of the neon lights that we actually budgeted for, we have the blue and green sort of glow of our computer screens. And instead of sharing beautiful physical space with one another, creating an atmosphere and a context within our symposium, well, we've got grids from the sort of Zoom grid view that we've all come to appreciate, if not exactly love. And so a lot has clearly changed in our MedMuse Symposium planning. However, we've decided to keep the core theme of our symposium the same, which was how we embody the many I's and identities we each embody in medicine. And in some ways, COVID-19, our pandemic situation, has created even more meaning for this theme that we chose. As we're each called to step up, as we're each called to represent our communities and serve our communities, we also have this blurring of identities. We're juggling many different things at once. And similarly with our physical spaces and our online spaces. So there's a lot going on. These are challenging, uncharted times that we live in. Personally, I found it challenging to hold it all together. There have been days when I wasn't sure how exactly I'd do this, and we've all had those days. But when I became quite ill during the planning of the symposium, I had incredible teammates and mentors to fall back on, people who really held the line. And so as not to miss someone, I'm just going to be reading off that Ash, Elena, Victoria, Caitlin, Christy, Jackie, Dr. Bryant Lin, and Dr. Audrey Schaefer have been incredible in holding the line. And without their kindness, their incredible hard work, this symposium just wouldn't happen. We've also gotten incredible written submissions to our website from Lexi Doyle, Hannah Rasmussen, Lojo, and Vivian Ho. So while we share the magic of creating things together still and having the symposium, I wanted to offer a grounding sentiment that although we embody many different identities in ourselves, we share a common humanity, and that's evident through our ability to connect and create art together. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I also know that I ramble a whole lot. So without further ado, let me introduce the first incredible act for tonight. We've got Stephen Marcott, who is a rising clerkship student, also a biomed humanities scholarly concentration member. He's a strong advocate for mental health and has an incredibly dry wit, which he'll be sharing with us in a piece he wrote on the importance of lacrimation, or crying, in medical education.
Thank you so much, Rose. I really appreciate that introduction. And I'll just get right to it. So the name of my piece is Just a Blonde Kid. And it starts, if I'm a marshmallow now, as a kid, I was the fluff that my mom put on the peanut butter sandwiches I ate every day before recess. I was the blonde kid who cried over getting a room with pink wallpaper in our first house, but only after my babysitter's son, Scott, gendered it for me. I cried when 2 kids beat me up as part of my black belt test. Not long after that, I cried again. I dropped 2 blue fly balls to blow my Gibson Cubs Little League title chances. That one still stings. My childhood was a rocky montage of tearing up, which is a fitting analogy because, like Stallone, I was pretty short. For a young aspiring doctor from New York, I always had an uncharacteristic fragility to me, no accent, and when my childhood was through, tear duct fatigue. Back then, crying was something reactive and adaptive that between diaper changes, my parents hoped I would grow out of eventually. It was a pastime I didn't give much thought. It's only as an adult with darker, thinner hair that I've started to at least try and attach meaning to the act and its role in the medical field beyond lubrication and intermittent sadness. As a medical student otolaryngology nerd, source material came pretty quickly. In the anatomy lab, I dissected out our cadaver's lacrimal glands, barely visible under the supraorbital fascia. Later, in our women's health block, crying put the R in APGAR. In the end, nothing in our preclinical curriculum quite got at what I was looking for, which was admittedly a little bit abstract, meaning nostalgia and maybe a connection with my younger self. Eventually and unintentionally, I succeeded, but it happened in a typical way, which was by becoming more emotional in medical school and not less. To appreciate the Blond levels of emotion I was chasing, I'll use some of the times where I fell off for a little bit of context. My crying habit fell off in high school. It had everything to do with confidence. I grew a foot taller in those 6 years and almost doubled in weight, but I still looked like I needed a sandwich. In my mind, I wasn't going to be that tiny, overwhelmed kid anymore. School helped. I flung myself into my classes, and I was good at it. Like any other dorky gamer, I liked getting the high score and having something that I felt I could control. Medicine entered my career differential then as well, driven by my grandmother's leukemia doctor giving her 5 years and good ones after her AML diagnosis. I thought giving people years with their families was the coolest thing a person could do, and I still do. Knowing this, I also knew that I needed the grades for it. College admissions came next. The world got a little taller for me on a hill in the middle of Ithaca. I made the best friends of my life at Cornell, one of whose weddings I just went to as a groomsman, and importantly, I still felt like I was good at what I did. My grades stayed up. I found a great job in New York Presbyterian. I did it well. And 2 years in AMCAS application and acceptance in California later, I arrived finally to medicine. By some reflex, though, somehow grasping my dream field sent my parasympathetic ganglia into overdrive. Leaving home for a completely new part of the country where I knew no one played a role, but I suspect it had more to do with my expectations. It wasn't that medicine wasn't what I expected. The professors I have here are kind and highly skilled. My education is outstanding. My classmates are Olympians and Rhodes Scholars and Green Berets and ex-NFL fullbacks. I love the material, and we live in a perfect microclimate. The problem was that I wasn't what I expected when I got here. Nothing came as quickly to me as I had thought or hoped it would. In a classroom of 100 kids practicing flu shots, I managed to be the only one precise enough to pierce my partner's phallic vein. Intravenous lines were hard, phlebotomy was hard, even history taking physicals could be hard. I felt like I walked into a time machine when I got to school, and when I walked back out, my clothes didn't fit and my hair was yellow, and I felt small again. The first time I really cried here, though, after establishing the above, involved my mom. At my smallest point, when I felt a whole foot shorter and like I just dropped those fly balls all over again, I started writing down my heroes in my dorm room, for some reason. I couldn't think of anything or anyone for longer than I would like to admit before my mom popped into my head. Ever since I left for college, I'd never been as good about calling home as I should have been, and it didn't get more straightforward with a 3-hour time difference. I started thinking about my childhood, about how my mom raised my brother and me mostly alone when my parents split, and how my mom paid for me to go to Cornell as a single mother. She did it for me, I'd always thought, but when I thought about it then and when I think about it now, it occurs to me that it wasn't really about me, or at least not entirely. It was also about my kids, the ones I haven't had yet, and the ones who will be so much better off one day for the opportunities that my mom gave me. At that moment, in my dorm room alone, I cried really hard. Ever since that day, the tears have come faster, and often for better or worse, happy or sad, they keep coming. Often they come when I don't expect it. They arrive at the start of an ED shift, where my girlfriend WhatsApps me good luck. Sometimes happens in private after I nail an IV. It happens when I watch a film like Gifted or Lilo and Stitch on an airplane, a notorious place for crying to happen, as told to me by Google and my mentor, Dr. Brightman. And I remember how much I want a family and a funny, quirky daughter. And those tears remind me of what I want, who I love, and why I'm in this field, which is to work hard to give people years and enrich their lives to the best of my ability in an area where there are no guarantees. It's as if after 20 years, that blind kid that I'm chasing, or blonde kid that I'm chasing, is reading all of this back to me right on time. When I think of crying now, I think of communication, I think of stories, I think of upbringing and values and inspiration. There's so much to unpack from the water that leaks out of the corners of our eyes beyond its role as a lubricant. Sometimes crying isn't a sign that something's wrong, but rather a sign that there's something left to be found or remembered that'll make us right and that can make us feel whole. My tears disarm me, they make me fall in love with my mom over and over again. And in a field as rigorous, rewarding, and at times frustrating as ours, they take me back to what makes this road so worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That's so powerful, and I'm sure many of us connect with it. I certainly did. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Lynn, who will introduce our next performer, Vivian Liu, and her sister, Valerie.
Great. Thank you so much, Ash. I really have the great honor of introducing Vivian Liu and her sister, Valerie Liu. Vivian is a student actually of mine currently in one of the new classes that have come about due to COVID. She's a fantastic first-year medical student who has recently reunited with her piano. She hopes you find peace and joy in the small things during this time. She will be playing a duet with her sister. They will be playing Vivaldi's Violin Concerto in A minor, third movement, Allegro.
All right, thanks so much, Dr. Lin, for the introduction. I'm super excited to be collaborating with my sister, and we hope you enjoy the piece.
Thank you so much, Valerie and Vivian. That was really amazing and so cool that you guys get to do that together as sisters. So with that, we'll move to our next performer, who is a fellow MS1, Lily Reed. And I am very, very excited to introduce Lily, who, as she likes to say, is my professional twin in medicine. So Lily is a first-year medical student from Eastern North Carolina, and she hopes to use her medical training and career to advance health equity through working with marginalized, vulnerable, and underserved communities. Take it away, Lily.
Hey, y'all. Hope you're having an awesome evening, and thank you, my professional twin, for the introduction. Before I begin, I'd like to give a bit of a content warning. This piece has some strong language, as well as references to violence, including racist police violence. So if those sound like topics that might be difficult for you right now, very understandable. So take space and time you need. I will not be offended. I can't even see that you're doing that. So without further ado, I will get to it. The things I miss most about home when I'm away are the givens. Those things you don't have to explain, because for those who've always been there, they're just given. Facts of your life as yours as your skin, sewn to you, ever present, like a heartbeat. And in their inherence, the givens are inconsequential. They're the background you need to understand the characters, but they aren't needed for the current narrative. They're the in last episode sequence, and thank God Netflix added that skip recap button. They're the things that someone would need to know you. But when you think of bringing them up to those who don't already know, it's never the right time. For me, I find that here, the realities given to those I grew up with in my sleepy, Southern, send them back chanting hometown are often spoken of in hypotheticals. Like those people from there, they would never be here. People hear my accent and ask with two sweet tones, "And where are you from?" Bitch, you know where I'm from, but you don't know where I'm from. You don't know what it's like to grow up in the land the country forgot. You imagine Southern sensibility, hospitality, wide open spaces, and rolling fields of cotton. And yeah, we got all that. But those fields were watered with our family's blood. Immigrants working for pennies so you could buy that Madewell top made in the USA for a cheap coin. We got that hospitality if you white, if you male, if you rich, if you ain't too funny like Uncle Joe who moved up to New York, or that real good hairdresser on the east side of town. We got little girls and little boys, grown women and men walking a little funny because they leg never heal right after break, and doctors here ain't they cry pain. And we ain't been finna pay that fancy college big city doctor money. And those wide open spaces, they might be good for social distancing, and good thing, because you can't make country folk wear no masks. They already too sick with freedom. But those wide open spaces can feel pretty small when you're trapped in one place, underemployed, undereducated, over-policed. We were raised on cornbread, collard greens, and a culture of violence. In this recipe, you can substitute hate for pride because it's the same. A diet of hot-headed, prideful men who take their shortcomings out on others, on you, on your family, your community. And school ain't no better. The pigs broke the hinge off their pen and now they unhinged. They got tasers, pepper spray, taking out their anger on little black and brown boys right in front of you day after day as you're just trying to learn that A is B squared equals C squared, as if that bullshit is gonna help you get the fuck up out of here. You don't see that where I come from is where my strength comes from. That growing up in this place, in this culture, has allowed me to connect, to reflect, and to persevere. When you ain't got shit else, you build your life off of each other, sowing your fields with community, warmth, and generosity. We have earned the calluses on our hands, but we don't let our heads get above our raisin. The South don't need to rise again because we were never the great white trope you thought we were, never that different from the rest of y'all. But you can't see that from atop your high horse. You see me as an exception, not a reflection of where I came from. You're the Harvard interviewer who tells me I'll absolutely get in because no one successful ever comes from where you come from. I'm sorry, that's some Northern style bless your heart bullshit. Do you mean that as a compliment? You're the kid in my dorm who tells me I'll be the first one to drop out of college as soon as the y'all start running out my mouth. You're the one looking at me now, thinking about how you ain't never heard a doctor talk like this before, and you probably won't. Even if you aren't bold enough to say it, when I let my tongue get ahead of me, I can see the way you think of me change on your face. Sometimes I miss being home because everyone understands the givens. Beyond the backdrop, see. They've seen me grow not in spite of where I'm from, but because of it. And in that space, I can code switch off, take leave of the watch on my words, and just be, because the rest is given. Thank you.
Perfect, Lily. Thank you. And we're really, really glad we got to hear the ending to that. Very worth it.
Splice it together.
Yeah. All right. So such a powerful piece. With that, Mika, are you in a place where you can step on, I hope? Awesome. All right. Thank you for being flexible. So Mika Tabata is going to take over for us right now, and it's a little bit of a switch, so she's going to do another musical piece for us. So Mika is a 5 out of 5 year medical student about to start residency at MGH for her intern year and then UT Austin Dermatology. She plans to pursue a career in complete medical dermatology, and she loves yoga, kickboxing, and singing. Thanks so much, Mika.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Ashley. I wrote this song for my dad recently, and it's about trying to find ways to still thrive even when you're grieving. You said you wanted a garden once. Now you say it would be too much. I see your pain, I feel it too. I see it though you don't want me to. The sun in your face, we're still in time and space. Though you're not there, the love's still in my heart. We'll make it a garden just 'cause we can. We're growing a garden. Elucidate thoughts that build your world. We're just getting started. The calm runs calm, catching fish just like in give through your breath. Just yen. 6 decades later, nothing's wasted. Light and soft are your words. Loving thoughts to see your conscience while you're out with the birds. Are you healing just like they don't want to? We'll make it a garden just 'cause we can. We're growing a garden. Elucidate thoughts that build deep that you're numb to the surface and won't let go. But holding on is even harder. When it's soft on your words, to be brought to see your conscience while you're out with the birds, or you're healing just like they want you. We'll make it a garden just 'cause we can. We're growing a garden. Elucidate thoughts that build your world. We're just getting started. Hey, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. Carpe diem, now won't you, won't you? Hey, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. Carpe diem, now won't you, won't you? Won't you, won't you? Won't you, won't you?
Thanks, Mika. You have such a beautiful voice and really a gorgeous, gorgeous song. And I'm actually going to turn it over to another student committee member, Victoria Wong, who will introduce our next performer, Rebecca Aliastra Bromley-Dulfano.
Rebecca is a first-year medical student at Stanford. She is interested in health policy, climate health, and health equity. She will be performing her poem, Mental Status versus the Universe.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and thanks for having me. Before I begin, I wanted to just briefly note that this poem does mention suicide, substance use, and mental illness. So if right now is not the best time to hear about those things, it's my strong preference that you just do whatever you need to do. If you want to turn down the audio or step out or whatever, that's totally fine. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to give folks a minute. And also breathe a little so I don't read too quickly. Okay. Mental status versus the universe. You are on Zoom, like usual. The psychiatry block is always a trip. Today, you will learn to assess mental status. They show you a video. A fake encounter. There's a middle-aged white man in a kaleidoscopic shirt, waving around bloated notebooks, exploding with scraps. He's heard the word of God, can cure cancer, the manic mechanic, scrumbling over invented words, playing names, games, clinging, repeats. You are told to note that this patient needed heavy redirection. He seems elevated, expansive. Did you notice the over-friendliness, decompensating into irritability? Thought processes, tangential. Judgment, poor. Perceptions, grandiose. What they don't teach you about that moment is how it feels to tear a line straight down reality and insanity. When you and your friend were sitting on that bench in a park on a beautiful day outside, she stares you in the eyes and tells you she feels connected to the universe through a cosmic vein, tapped into the larger currents of life, living through the legacy of hundreds of ancestors before her, finally able to see what is important. She has unlocked mathematics, solved problems untouched. You are in her life for a purpose, her best friend, her rock. She knows this because your name, Rebecca, a Jewish matriarch. Aliastra, a flickering star in the universe. She is happy for the first time, grateful for life, hopeful, confident. She is going to make a difference in the world, change it for the better. When you leave that bench and walk away, the awe you feel almost crushes you. You are curious about the stars, galaxies, fate, and history. You feel loved, uncertainty, connection. When you hear that your friend is hospitalized the next week for a laundry list of psychotic symptoms, you feel like an idiot. You didn't see the mania. Even though your aunt killed herself rapid cycling between euphoria and depression. Even when your father was a bipolar alcoholic, same disease, same symptoms, same kind of fucked up. He too knew all the answers. Your love for your friend debilitated you. You ached so badly for her reality to be true, or at least possible. You were scared of throwing into question every conversation with her before. She could have gone home and did everything in a moment. You would have been none the wiser. Your desire to see good in people, to find magic within them, blinded you to her risk. No epiphany is worth the loss of a friend, aunt, or parent. Maybe life dulled by heavy metals is better than a brief spark extinguished by the discontinuity between the manic and the defeated. Then again, maybe correcting the mind of anyone departed from the norm is not the answer either. What they don't tell you is that you wanted to believe her, that you still do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becca. Your words are always so beautiful and just blow me away, and I'm sure they do everyone else as well. So with that, we're going to turn to our final student performer of the night, Jane Thomas, and introducing her will be another of our student committee members, Elena O'Mara.
Hi everyone, we're really excited to have Jane Thomas here. She is a second-year medical student and founder of Poetry Workshop on the Stanford Hospital Inpatient Psychiatry. Jane is also one of the first people I met when we were on our Stanford Wilderness expedition before school started, and so she's really a strong leader and has amazing work, so we're excited to hear them today.
Thank you. All right. I too mention issues related to mental health. So, the oversized gray chairs have lead in their feet, so no one will throw them in a fit of paranoid anger. I drag mine heavily across the floor with an effortful heave just to take a seat at the table where bits of yesterday's dinner crust the surface. The smell of hospital food and body odor lingers permanently in the air. 9 people in sky blue striped pajamas surround me. I'm a second-year medical student and founder of the Poetry Workshop at Stanford Hospital's psychiatric inpatient units. I'm also keenly aware that at points in my life, I could have been one of these patients in striped blue pajamas, justifiably too. But here I am, dressed in a crisp, white button-up shirt and black slacks, sensible Mary Jane shoes, armed with a stack of surveys, blank paper, and a box of washable Crayola markers, safer than ballpoint pens because you can't use their squishy tips to stab or cut your skin. My white binder containing these armaments is a shield. I am different than you, it says. I'm one of the has-it-together ones. It's funny because 3 hours ago, after I got out of inpatient rounds, but before I began the arduous task of recruiting and consenting my participants for the day's poetry workshop, I slipped out of the hospital to get an iced matcha latte with oat milk. Afterwards, I sat on a stone bench in the sunlight, shaking and tearing at the corners of my eyes, mustering the strength to go back into the hospital and approach a half dozen or more suffering strangers and perkily ask if they might be interested in participating in a poetry group. I'm actually doing this as a research project. Would you potentially be willing to fill out some surveys so I can tell if the poetry group is helpful? Oh, thank you. That's great. The only annoying thing is that because it's a research project with surveys, you have to sign consent paperwork. Oh, you don't feel comfortable signing consent paperwork. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I hope you have a good day. I feel like a phony, wishing patients with psychiatric instability severe enough to warrant hospitalization a good day. Or else, okay, I'm just going to go over the risks and potential benefits of participating in this research study. Oh, yes, I know, it's a bit odd to talk about the risks of writing poetry. To myself, I think, you may turn into Emily Dickinson and hardly ever leave your bedroom in your later years. Out loud, I say, one risk of writing and sharing poetry is that it may trigger memories of a traumatic event in your past. So I ask that all participants be mindful of what they share. I want us to strike a balance between being honest and forthcoming, but also mindful of how our words could affect the other people in the group. I pause, searching the patient's face for understanding, then add, in particular, please don't share the details of a traumatic event. Does that sound reasonable? I repeat this blurb several times a day for months, trying at once to grasp at the undercurrent of authenticity embedded in great, or even just kind of good poetry, while also supporting, or at least not overtly undermining, the goal of psychological stabilization, not deep exploration, that is the cornerstone of an inpatient unit like this one. I founded this group because poetry has been my lifeline at times of despair and disillusion, and I hope to give that gift to others. We work with a stream of consciousness style with simple suggestions aimed at helping us create freely without self-editing during the process of generating a first draft. The key to this strategy is that the inner critic, the editor, is useful at some times, but unhelpful at others. We are working the muscle of learning to listen to some inner voices and politely disregard others. Thank you, inner critic, for your input, but right now, I'm just writing a first draft, so I don't need your help. Off you go. I expect that this skill is as practical for patients with psychotic second voices as those with depression marked by harsh guilt. I move my head steadily around the room to take in the voices surrounding me. Some wrinkled with some sunspots, others fresh. With a deep breath of musty air, I begin the workshop, starting, of course, with the brief mood survey. Epilogue. Brief mood surveys from 62 instances of participation in the workshop showed that there were statistically significant improvements in depression, anxiety, relationship satisfaction, and anger after participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. I have had the pleasure of being in a couple of classes and a writing retreat and multiple experiences with you, and I just learn so much from you every time, and I'm just completely inspired by your work and your amazing insight into the universe. So thank you for closing off our student performance section for us. Okay, so I just want to say thank you again to all of our performers. This is a really new format. This is something new for them all to do, and they're all sharing these incredibly vulnerable, powerful pieces over Zoom of all things. So thank you so much to everybody. At this time, we're going to have a question and answer section, and our student committee director, Rose, is going to be moderating that. So all of you out there listening, please take a couple of moments to submit any questions that you might have for any of our performers tonight, either if it's about how they came up with their work or what else they like to read or write or listen to or who inspires them. Send in your comments and questions in the Q&A, and Rose will take a look through those and read them out to some of our performers. Thanks so much, Rose.
Yep, so as Ash mentioned, we're just leaving some space right now to get your questions and field those. So while you are all coming up with questions, I'd like to start us off by reading some of the comments and other feedback that people have given to the performers who have shared their hearts and their souls with us tonight. And of course, performers can ask questions too. So we're starting off with Anita Hung Kaken, or Hung Cannon, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who stated, "Beautiful playing, amazing, and the reading was phenomenal. I teared up. I've been feeling much the same way." There's so much going on emotionally. I wish I had all of my facial muscles practiced to like make the correct thing. Unfortunately, still not there yet. So from an anonymous attendee, we've gotten our first question. Do you have any groups I can join? And if we could ask for maybe a little more clarification about what kinds of groups might you be interested in? If you're looking for writing groups or to work with Muse as well for the organization of future symposium and events, we certainly have a lot of resources that we would point you to. So if you have another question, absolutely feel free to submit.
I think one of our faculty members might be able to comment too on the types of writing groups and the Medicine and the Muse program in general that people might be able to join if they're interested.
Sure, I can step in. Our students are amazing and are constantly creating new programs as well. We do have some programs that are open beyond the medical school, and one of them is a Saturday morning writing workshop called Writing Medicine that's led by Dr. Laurel Breitman. You heard her mentioned before, and if you go to writingmedicine.org, you can sign up for that. And I encourage everyone to come back to this slot for Stuck at Home next week, and it's always a different program each week, so please do reach out if you want to get involved, and we can see if there's something there. But as I say, we're a pretty dynamic program, and our students are amazingly creative and are leaders and really work to provide new programming.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. And we've got some other questions as well from Rona who asks, "I'm a psychiatrist and hoping that those who read mental health related essays and poems are considering psychiatry as a specialty. Question, are you? I hope so." And so maybe if we could have the people who shared their incredible stories of just the experiences we've all had within our medical training and how that connects to our lives. Answer however, in whatever order that they'd like.
I would be happy to answer this question. It's funny, I worked at a psychiatric hospital briefly before medical school, and I honestly didn't love the job. And my takeaway was I still want to go into medicine, but psychiatry is not for me. And I've completely changed my mind since getting to medical school, and I'm absolutely planning to go into psychiatry. I'm doing co-therapy right now, learning how to do therapy with a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And that's been a really valuable experience. So yeah, definitely interested in psychiatry.
Yeah, and I can hop in as well. I think I'm a first year, I'm open, not sure as many of us are, but I think during my undergrad did a lot of advocacy around mental health and mental illness, and I think even more, like, irrespective of whether it's psychiatry or not, I'm hoping to bring kind of a mental health advocacy lens into medicine, no matter what field.
Absolutely. And not to put you on the spot, but Stephen, would you also be able to provide some sort of response for the question of whether you're interested in psychiatry?
That's my mistake. No, I would definitely say that I am. I've been interested in it since I've been interested in it for the last year or two, especially since getting to school. I had a similar thing to what Jane was saying, is that I wasn't sure exactly whether or not that was going to be the one for me when I got here. But over time, over time it's become really special to me. And my first rotation in the fall is going to be in psych, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that one's going to turn out. I'm excited for the next step.
Awesome. So we definitely have a lot of folks who are really invested and interested in psychiatry. So perhaps you'll have some awesome colleagues in the future, Doctor Who. So moving on to another question. So this is from Ash on our team. For Mika, can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for your song, and if you're comfortable doing so? What are your composing and writing processes like? Really interested in that.
Thank you, Ashley, for the question. I would love to share about that. So full disclosure, I have not written very many songs, but when I do, they're usually for someone or someone I care about, or trying to convey a message to someone. And so for the quarantine, I went home and I'm in my parents' house in Houston. And my grandmother, my dad's mom, passed away actually on Christmas Eve, but because of traveling, we haven't been able to fully go do the ceremonies that we are supposed to do in Japan. And I've been seeing my dad at home. You know, just is very hard for him to deal with the loss of his mother, as it is for all of us, but especially for him. And I want him to like live for many more years and have a happy, wonderful life, and to do lots of things that bring him joy. And I see he feels regret from moving to the US and his mom being in Japan for a majority of their lives, and feeling some loss about that, regret and loss and grief. And so I thought, you know, seeing that and also being home for quarantine, I realized I could write a song for him. And in medicine, there have been a lot of experiences that I've felt like grief, and I felt loss. My first rotation, my first patient ever passed away, and then a week later my second patient passed away, like back to back. And so that, you know, is very difficult. We've all had those experiences in medicine, losing a patient. Also in my personal life in medical school has been very hard. Having a really rough breakup that I had a lot of regret about, that it made it more difficult for me to function in med school. But I felt like meditation has been really helpful for me, trying to use other ways to still like cherish my time, cherish being in med school, cherish the people around me, and find ways to still thrive even when you're grieving for something, because life doesn't just stop. And then I've also felt like I've wasted some time being sad. So I don't want my dad to waste any of his days. So that was like what the message of the song is about, and that was my inspiration for writing it. In terms of composing process, so my younger brother is very inspiring to me. He just graduated with his master's in music composition, but I have very little background. But he gave me a keyboard my senior year of college. So I've been trying to like figure out how to, I don't really play the piano, but I could just like pick out chords, you know, like pop songs are 4 chords, and then just go from there. So that's, I was just kind of playing around on the piano, realized I could tell my dad this in a way that would, you know, it's hard to tell your dad something. You can't order people around like, be happy, you know, that's not the most effective way. So I thought this might be a better way. And then composing process, just like find some chords and just like melodies will pop into my head, and then I'll try to fit words to them. And so one thing that worked out nicely is Some of the lyrics in the song about the cormorants catching fish just like in Gifu. So my dad one day went on a walk behind our house and saw some cormorants, some birds that like catch fish in the water. And he came back and was really nostalgic and said that, you know, my grandmother took me when I was a young boy to Gifu in Japan, and it must have been super expensive for us to go on that trip, but she wanted me to see what a cool thing it is that they have these fishermen using the birds to catch fish. It's a very traditional Japanese thing. And that made him feel even more nostalgic and more grief that, wow, my mom did this thing for me and now she's gone. So I wanted to incorporate those lyrics in there. I was writing the song that day, and then he said that to me. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hope it answers the question.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
An incredible, beautiful response. So at this point, we're transitioning onwards to our next section of the symposium, where, and I'll pass this on to Ash.
All right, so with that, we're excited to move to the keynote speaker section of the night. We've got a wonderful documentary film producer here for you, and Elena is going to introduce Ken.
All right, everyone. So Ken Brown is joining us today. We're really excited. He is a graduate of Brandeis and Yale Universities, and he entered TV production around the 1980s as a film director with the Major League Baseball productions and went on to earn 2 Emmy Awards with them. After launching his own company in 1986, Ken produced sports TV, corporate communications, and promotional videos for publishers, school districts, and universities. He has a strong belief in the power of arts and educational opportunity, inspiring him to develop a series and many documentaries in the past, of which you can look into. And the most recent, which we're going to take a sneak peek of, is Why Doctors Write: Finding Humanity in Medicine. And it's about the impact of arts in people's lives, and this time in the field of medicine. So we're really excited to hear more from Ken. And please submit any questions you have to Ken in the Q&A while you're viewing. And I'll leave it off to Ken.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. When I first heard about this, I heard about Berg Hall, and I imagine a beautiful place on the wonderful campus of Stanford University and sunny skies of Palo Alto. I had no idea that I'd be attending this symposium here in New Jersey in my home, but it is a stay-at-home event, and I'm grateful to be invited into this space to share with you a segment of Why Doctors Write. I'm honored, in fact, and I thank Dr. Schaefer and Jackie Genovese and Christy Hartman and Dr. Lin for making this so easy for me to participate. I'm especially grateful to be here now for a symposium called The Many Eyes in Medicine, because I feel that all eyes and ears are focused on what doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers are saying and writing during this COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, when an MD or another frontline worker steps to the mic now on CNN or the local news, I know I'm paying attention, and I feel like everybody's paying attention to their words. The importance of data and science now and humanity is just so important. This film, Why Doctors Write, as Elena mentioned, began as a story about the impact of the arts, something that I've been interested in since college. But when I heard about what was going on in the world of medicine, I became very intrigued. It's a place that I didn't associate with the arts, so I wanted to find out more. And as I researched this topic, I was amazed that not only did many clinicians find the time to write novels, essays, and poems, but as teachers of medicine, they had created many and varied programs utilizing the tools of writing, the humanities, and the arts to train students. I learned about things like narrative medicine, the Bellevue Literary Review, lit and med groups at VA hospitals, something called the Hippocrates Prize in Poetry and Medicine, the Examine Life at conference. And yes, I learned about medicine and the Muse at Stanford. I was amazed that such a rich tapestry of writing, reflective writing, humanities, health humanities programs, and the use of the arts, music, dance, illustration, sketching. The arts were so much a part of today's 21st century world of medicine. I was quite startled, in fact, and I was intrigued. Thankfully, with the support of the practitioners and institutions that in the film, of course, foundations and donors who've helped fund Why Doctors Write, I produced a half-hour film. It's going to be released in this summer, in 2020, and I'm hoping that the film will find an audience in the medical world. This is technically the premiere of the film, and it's an incredible honor to be in this context of medicine, the Muse, and Stanford School of Medicine. And I'm very, very grateful. I'm also hoping that the general public will see merit in watching this film, will find some interest. Luckily, some of the films I've worked on, documentary specials, have reached public television, which is very gratifying that there are people out there that are also interested to hear about how the arts affect our lives, how they build community, and how they connect us. And I'm hoping that people will want to find out more about what doctors do. As the Pegasus physician writer in the film, Bill Meffert, pointed out when I met him. The film has an anthology structure of episodes from the different locations that I've been lucky to go to produce on location. And tonight it's my pleasure to share with you an episode called Anesthesia and the Muse. And it features people and places that I think you may recognize. It's preceded by a brief intro that I've been able to put together just in the past few days that at least references what is happening right now in your field. And I have to thank two of the doctor writers who appear in the film, Dr. Audrey Schaefer and Dr. Daniel Ofri, who I hope is in the audience tonight. So with that, I'd like to share with you this clip from Why Doctors Write. Thank you so much.
I am an essential worker. I just didn't realize how essential I was and never would have described myself that way until the coronavirus pandemic. Donning enhanced personal protective equipment, I checked the barriers protecting me as an anesthesiologist during and after the airway procedures I will perform. I look down at my frightened or too far gone to be frightened patient. I'm the last person they will see before I push sedatives and place a plastic tube between their vocal cords.
2 days ago, I was rounding in the medical intensive care unit with the palliative care team. There's 54 rooms in the ICU and every single patient's intubated. After that, I went back to my clinic to make just routine phone calls to my patients. One of those patients of mine is a patient I've known for 10 years, and she has bad diabetes. And I called and I found out that she died of COVID a few days ago at another hospital. You know, even though I'd just been in the ICU with all these patients who were intubated, many of whom were dying, it didn't hit me like it did with my own patient who I've known for 10 years. And partly as I wasn't prepared, I was making it just a routine call. And that day, it's the first day I cried. Anesthesiology is a hidden profession. Not many people enter medical school saying, I want to be an anesthesiologist. And when I entered medical school, I had never heard of it. I took an anesthesiology rotation, and I wound up understanding that I love this field. I love the people who work in it. It's been hemodynamically stable. We meet patients at a really critical moment. We need to establish a very personal human connection pretty quickly. I think the operating room is ready for us. It's a critical moment. They're just about to go into the operating room.
I'm just a bit nervous about the whole going under part, because you see all.
What amazes me time and time again is the amount of trust that a patient will give me. That patient will not be able to blink, will not be able to take a breath in or even let a breath out. And we'll get rid of all that Palo Alto air and give you fresh oxygen. You're doing great. I am 100% responsible for that patient's vital signs and their personhood that's hiding underneath, that I have caused to hide. Everything is looking perfect here.
Okay.
So, yeah, you'll be good. When I had finished anesthesia training, I had taken a poetry course with a poet, Denise Levertov. She absolutely changed my life. She enabled me to see that that is how I process the world, that even if I'm not physically writing, that I am analyzing and interpreting my world through this effort to place things in phrases and to juxtapose things that might be surprising. We meet in the holding room. A paper dress covers your tattoos. At any moment, your craze of fragile vessels could fill the sea cave cradling your mind. For me as a poet, the experience of being an anesthesiologist has synergy. In the part where one meets a patient, starts asking some very intimate questions about their medical history, the specific word choice is incredibly important. Another aspect as an anesthesiologist, there is a start of the anesthesia care. There's a very intense middle period, and then there's an ending to it. There's a resurfacing. And I find that to be incredibly satisfying. When I work on a poem, there can be a sense of closure as well, that I've worked on this, it's important to me. Some time ago, I decided I wanted to look at the intersection of the arts and medicine. So I started offering a class in literature and medicine that was devoted to creative writing, and discovered that this little elective class at the medical school lit students up. They felt they were not given permission really to take time to work on their own creativity. Those students need mentorship. So I was very busy trying to form a better network of physician writers for our medical students. We have a group called Pegasus Physician Writers, and this group is a working group of physicians and medical students who meet monthly and workshop their work.
Today we have two pieces, short story by Bill, and the second one is a poem by Virginia. And so at first we were 6, and now we're 135. We take anybody who's either a doctor or on the way to being a doctor or thinking about being a doctor.
A long line of patients, some standing with small tree limbs as crutches, still others who had been carried to the clinic waited near an open door.
Every member around the table gets a voice. But the comments have to be very clear. They have to be one positive.
This is how everyone should write. I think the economy of words is very surgical.
One thing that could be done better.
I felt like there was another ending here that discussed more how he was feeling, or how she was feeling, or how they were feeling about each other.
It cannot be hurtful. This is not a rigorous examination in creative writing. This is the Pegasus physicians workshopping where we help each other.
I love the movement and the energy of this piece. I love the descriptions, especially of Haiti. One of the best things about Pegasus is that we all understand our stories have value. The process of telling that story to somebody else and how that gets crafted into words and how it comes to the page is such a pleasure to work on together.
The very first line, you open with the fact that Vera was a tough operating room nurse. I think I'm very, very mindful that this is a time to be very respectful, but also a time to convey a sense of wanting to develop something more to the writer in a way that's kind still and very supportive.
You know, I can understand all your comments. I appreciate it. I get a lot of feedback that we want to get closer to what you thought and what you felt. You know, they just sort of explode the story for you, and you end up developing it in far more detail than you thought.
A lot of what goes on in those workshop groups is the building of friendship through writing, through sharing, through feeling okay to be vulnerable in front of someone who's in a completely different department, someone who's more senior or more junior. To create that kind of community is unusual in medicine.
For us, the writing physicians, it has tremendous value to take these events, which are so heartbreaking sometimes, and put them into a story or a poem. And it's on paper, and it reads beautiful, but it doesn't hurt as much anymore.
Thank you for watching.
Great, thank you so much. And also I wanted to encourage questions for Ken. So feel free to submit any questions to the question and answer little blurb bubble you have down the bottom of your screen. Ken, I guess I have a question in the meantime while people think, if that's okay. Oh, here, I see a question. Oh, okay. Oop. Someone just moved it. Oh, has creating this documentary inspired you to write it all yourself?
Wonderful question. Yes, it has. And I continue to hit the same obstacles that I always have hit in attempting to write. I think finding a voice is something that has been a lifelong process for me. Maybe that's why I found myself comfortable in a dark room by myself, editing film, looking at flashing monitors, and trying to put a story together with moving images and sounds and words. But I'm still working at it, and I have discovered so many moving stories and compelling people on this particular project. I'm inspired. The idea, I've observed narrative medicine, I've observed Pegasus physician writers, I've recently completed filming a new episode, which I plan to add, about the Story Slam at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine. And as with the students tonight, the power and the emotion of sharing one's voice and one's experience in this medium is something I aspire to, and I'm going to get there. I promise you guys I'm going to write something.
Another question kind of has been, how prevalent is writing among doctors? And like, what did you find in your search for this documentary?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think my discovery during actually a conversation with a wonderful friend of mine, Dr. David Sacker, a retired professor of medicine and gastroenterologist, who asked me, "Are you working on anything new?" And I said, "No." And I mentioned I love working on documentaries about artists, about their audience, about their process. And he asked me if I knew that in medicine, the arts and humanities were prevalent and growing in medical schools. And I did not know that. I'd heard about health humanities, I'd heard about narrative medicine, but I really didn't know much about it. And I discovered not only was it prevalent in medical school, but doctors and medical students were writing in personal ways in an unprecedented amount. The number of publications, articles about clinical experience in a more personal reflective mode as opposed to a research or clinically objective mode was growing and growing. And he pointed me to a website called humanismandmedicine.org and the Arnold P. Gold Foundation. And that's where I discovered a book that the title of which jumped out at me, What Doctors Feel. And it never occurred to me that doctors felt anything. I thought it wasn't the job of doctors to feel. It was the patient's job to feel and let the doctor know what hurt and what could be fixed. And I was very engaged. Fortunately, that foundation and another foundation liked the idea of a documentary that looked at this growing phenomenon of writer MDs. And that really just opened up a whole new world. Not only was I meeting wonderful practitioners of medicine, eloquent, articulate advocates and representatives of your science, your discipline, but I discovered that there was a whole world out there. There were publications, there were conferences, there were programs all around the country that have been doing this work probably since the 60s, the 70s, and then it really it took off. I think a seminal moment was the NEH funding of the Institute for Literature and Medicine in 1989, which took place in Ohio. And then it spread to the University of Texas Medical School, and it really took off from there. And then narrative medicine came along in the late 90s when the amazing Dr. Rita Sharon completed a PhD in English in the middle of a medical career. So there were things on the landscape that kind of blew me away. Why would the busiest of professions, at least to me, a doctor, would have any time whatsoever or space in one's mind to consider taking on this other role in the world? And then I started to get it, that it wasn't enough to be with the patient in the clinic, but to take the next step and share about that experience, and thereby become a better practitioner and a better caregiver. And I really believe the one takeaway I've gotten from everybody I've met on this project is that this is about physician self-care and thereby patient care. So, and in the process, I've discovered some great classic writers. William Carlos Williams, if you've never read his autobiography, it's powerful. Writers at Stanford, I've discovered Verghese, Yalom, Schaefer, many. And I'm looking forward to reaching out to more medical students and hospitals, conferences, just to show them, look, this is going on, this is what it looks like. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Great. And I'll just ask one more from an attendee. How much planning and scripting is possible for the documentary film?
That's a great question. I think as a filmmaker, you begin as a researcher, then you move on to a storyteller. It's also like being a curator of an exhibit. And then finally, you're an exhibitor. And I think along the way, after researching, where compelling stories are, and you do some telephoning and go on YouTube, maybe you see some of these people giving a talk on a TED Talk and get a sense of them as a people. What you really want to do in a documentary is get to the personal story. Why is this compelling? Why did it happen to you? Why is it important to you? And pretty much tell that story and share it with the audience, because there's an amazing amount of stories out there, and this is kind of like the golden age of documentaries. It's a phenomenal field, and it's rich, and it's been a wonderful honor, and I'm grateful to have learned the skills that at least I can contribute something to that field. But medicine is, as I said in my introduction, it's come to the fore of our lives in a way we never could have imagined. And every bit of the work you do that goes on in Medicine and the Muse and other programs like it, I think can only become more engaging and more important in the whole landscape of medical care. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And now I will have Ash introduce our last speaker for the night.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you so much, Ken. That was just really, really incredible. And I was just watching that film and seeing Fits of Stanford, seeing people I know, and really just having such an incredible memories of campus, and I know we're all dealing with that right now. So I wanted to move to the next part of our program, and that will be our amazing Medicine and the Muse director, who you will recognize from the film. So Dr. Audrey Schaefer is a professor of anesthesiology, perioperative, and pain medicine, and her clinical work is at the Veterans Affairs Palo Alto Healthcare System. She founded and directs the Stanford Medicine and the Muse program, co-directs the Biomedical Ethics and Medical Humanities Scholarly Concentration, and co-founded Pegasus Physician Writers. So with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you so much, Ash. And just my heart is overflowing with all the work that's been presented. I am so grateful to the students, to their willingness to share their talents, to really expose their vulnerabilities, their passions, and it's been an amazing symposium. I want to be sure to thank the committee itself and our leader of our committee, Rose, for navigating this new path to sharing the work of our Stanford medical students, and to thank each and every performer and presenter this evening. I want to mention, as Rose had, that there is another part to the symposium, and that is on the Medicine and Muse website. So if you go to Stanford Medicine and Muse website, you will find the link for Ken Brown's film, Why Doctors Write, which he has graciously made available in this premiere for 1 week. And you can see all the many programs across the country that are doing this work in health humanities. And additionally, you can see work by some of our other medical students, creative work and scholarly work that complement what you've seen tonight. You can imagine wandering through the art exhibit that we would normally have to conclude our evening. So many thanks to so many people behind the scenes, and to Dr. Lin for hosting our event in the Stuck at Home series. So finally, just one note that I do think that the theme, the many eyes in medicine, is particularly appropriate for me this evening. I'm sitting in the living room where in the year 2001, we held our first gathering of medical students presenting their medical scholars projects in the arts and humanities. We were here with their mentors and with faculty and staff from across the university. And at the end of the presentations, we all stood in a circle together. And there was a curator from the Cantor Arts Center who sang a cappella, and it really touched our hearts. And now I find myself back in this same living room where that started. And it's really all these years of presentations are due to the hard work, the creativity, the innovation of our students. And I've just do feel overwhelmed with gratitude for them over the years. And finally, I think the many eyes work so well because it's not only this living room this time, but all of your living rooms, all of your home spaces. We are all in this together. We are all creating a large circle together. So with that, I wish you all well, and I look forward to another year and see what that brings. So many, many thanks from Medicine the Muse.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer, and to all of our audience out there, thanks for sticking through technology issues with us and spending your time on this late May evening listening to everyone's powerful works. So just a reminder that next week we'll be returning with this same time slot for the regular Stuck at Home concerts. So we hope to see you all back next week. And with that, I'll let you all go off and enjoy your evenings wherever you may be. Bye, everyone.